Senate will come to order. Would ask that unauthorized visitors exit the chamber at this time as the Senate is coming to order. It is now my distinct honor to recognize that tall, dark, and handsome and debonair senator from the 53rd.
So true, Mr. President, so true. Moment in history. This time, I'm shook up now. In 1945, the Georgia Ports Authority was created. Also, the senator from the 13th in 1969 did his first therapy session as he looked in the mirror of himself. The journal's been read, found to be correct.
Thank you, Senator. Is there objection to dispensing with the reading of the journal? Reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to the confirmation of the journal? Chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. All senators having bills and resolutions to introduce, please bring them to the Secretary's desk at this time. I'd like to welcome the Senate members to John Bullock Day today, honoring our good senator who was the very, very good friend, along with the Senate Ag Committee chairman for so many years, who would always break the rules and has set a policy here for one day out of the year we wear blue jeans. Secretary will read Senate bills.
Senate Bill 485 by Senator Jordan the 6th and others. A bill we titled Enactment and Act providing homestead exemption from City of Atlanta.
Slow go.
Senate Bill 486 by Senator Jordan the 6th and others.
Slow go.
Senate Bill 487 by Senator Jones the 10th and others.
Slow go.
Senate Resolution 977 by Senator Williams the 39th and others. A resolution
Higher education.
Senate Resolution 983 by Senator Brass the 28th and others. A resolution
Health and Human Services.
Senate Resolution 989 by Senator Wilkinson the 50th and others. A resolution
Agriculture.
Senate Resolution 993 by Senator Sims the 12th and others. A resolution
Transportation.
Senate Resolution 995 by Senator Bees the 21st. A resolution creating the Senate Study Committee on Combat Sports and for other
Rules Committee.
Mr. President, that concludes the order.
First reading in reference of House bills.
House Bill 964, President Jones of the 91st and others. The bill will be titled an act providing for the compensation of the members and chairperson of the Board of Education of Rockdale County, approved March 10th, 1988, so as to modify the compensation of the members of the Board of Education of Rockdale County, to provide for future cost of living increases, to provide for related matters, provide for an effective date, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes.
Slow go.
That concludes the order.
Secretary will read reports of standing committees.
Mr. President, the City Committee on Health and Human Services has under consideration the following legislation instructing the board the same back to Senate with following recommendation. House Bill 305 do pass. House Bill 513 do pass by substitute. House Bill 769 do pass by substitute. House Bill 844 do pass. House Bill 909 do pass. House Bill 920 do pass. Senator Senator Untum the 45th. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Insurance and Labor has under consideration the following legislation instructing the board the same back to Senate with following recommendation. Senate Resolution 3 and 29 do pass by substitute. House Bill 734 do pass. House Bill 754 do pass. House Bill 760 do pass by substitute. House Bill 938 do pass by Senator Jones the 25th. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Education and Youth has had our consideration of following legislation instructing the board the same back to the Senate following recommendation. House Resolution 899 do pass by Senator Tippins of the 37th. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Finance has had our consideration of following legislation instructing the board the same back to the Senate following recommendation. House Bill 374 do pass by substitute. House Bill 664 do pass. House Bill 729 do pass by substitute. House Bill 756 do pass. House Bill 849 do pass. House Bill 888 do pass by substitute. Similar to House Bill the 52nd. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Public Safety has had our consideration of following legislation instructing the board the same back to the Senate following recommendation. House Bill 419 do pass by substitute. House Bill 671 do pass by substitute. House Bill 809 do pass. House Bill 867 do pass. House Bill 751 do pass by substitute. House Bill 721 do pass by substitute. Sent by Senator Albers of the 56th. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Agriculture and Consumer Affairs has had consideration of following legislation instructing the board sending back to the Senate for recommendation. House Bill 876 to pass. House Bill 886 to pass. Senator Sarah Wilkinson of the 50th. Mr. President, Senate Judiciary Committee has had consideration of following legislation instructing the board to send back to the Senate for recommendation. House Bill 830 to pass. House Bill 897 to pass. Senator Tone 23rd. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Judiciary has had consideration of following legislation instructing the board to send back to the Senate for recommendation. House Bill 654 to pass. House Bill 906 to pass. House Bill 825 to pass. House Bill 917 to pass. House Bill 999 to pass. Senator Tone 23rd. Mr. President, Senate Committee on State and Local Government Operations General has had consideration of following legislation instructing the board to send back to the Senate for recommendation. House Bill 189 to pass by substitute. House Bill 814 to pass. Senator Kirk of the 13th. Mr. President, State of Commanding State and Local Government Operations, Senate consideration of final legislation instructing board of the same back to the Senate for recommendation. House Bill 626 to pass, House Bill 846 to pass, House Bill 934 to pass, House Bill 1003 to pass, and I serve Kirk of the 13th. And Mr. President, City Committee on State and Local Government Operations has a consideration of following legislation instructing the board of the same back to the Senate for recommendation. Senate Bill 264 to pass by substitute. House Senate Bill 477 to pass. Senate Bill 478 to pass. Senate Bill 480 to pass. House Bill 586 to pass. House Bill 610 to pass. House Bill 619 to pass. House Bill 772 to pass. House Bill 807 to pass. House Bill 839 to pass. House Bill 863 to pass. House Bill 864 to pass. Somebody, Sir Kirk of the 13th. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Secretary will read bills for the second time.
Senate Resolution 882 by Senator Jones, the 25th and others. Senate Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport Operations and Authority Creation Study Committee to create. Senate Resolution 885 by Senator Beach of the 21st. Carrie Elbury Memorial Bridge, Upson County, dedicate. Senate Resolution 899 by Senator James the 35th and others. Unify Georgia Day, recognize March 9th, 2018. Senate Resolution 906 by Senator Anderson, the 43rd. Walk of Heroes, Veterans and Interchange, Rockdale County, dedicate. Senate Resolution 914 by Senator Davenport of the 44th and others. Senate Emergency Pursuits by Law Enforcement Officers Study Committee, create. Senate Resolution 923 by Senator Molson of the 53rd. Jasper W.J.W. Dodd Jr. Memorial Intersection, Walker County, dedicate. Senate Resolution 924 by Senator Molson of the 53rd. Ben Napier Memorial Intersection, Walker County, dedicate. Senate Resolution 925 by Senator Molson of the 53rd. William Calvert Coach Sandberg Memorial Intersection, Walker County, dedicate. Senate Resolution 935 by Senator Albers of the 56th and others. Senate School Safety Study Committee, creates. Senate Resolution 940 by Senator Jones the 25th and others. President of the United States Infrastructure Plan Support, Senate Resolution 942 by Senator Davenport of the 44th and others. Annie Lois Freeman Soldier Bridge, Clayton County, dedicate. Senate Resolution 943 by Senator Harbison the 50th. David M. Anthony Memorial Bridge, Marion Talbot County, dedicate. Senate Resolution 944 by Senator Davenport of the 44th and others. Carl Genius Soldier Bridge, Clayton County, dedicate. Senate Resolution 947 by Senator Davenport of the 44th and others. Jackson Queen Mary Dixon Memorial Highway, Clayton and Henry County, dedicate. Senate Resolution 954 by Senator James the 35th. Samuel L. and Latanya Jackson Highway, Fulton County, dedicates. House Bill 79 by President Petzl of the 133rd and others. Law enforcement retaining license plate data obtained from automated license plate recognition systems beyond certain periods prohibit. House Bill 398 by President Battles of the 15th and others. Peace Officers Annuity and Benefit Fund, updated cross-reference provisions. House Bill 422 by Representative Hitchens, the 161st and others. Veteran Service, Department of Nonprofit Corporation as a public foundation, authorizing corporation. House Bill 571 by President Watson, the 172nd and others. Magistrates Retirement Fund, member in arrears for dues payment for 90 days shall be suspended. Provisions. House Bill 592 by President Lunston, the 12th and others. Insurance Compliance, Self-Evaluation Privilege, repeal applicability and sunset provisions. House Bill 665 by President Lunston, the 12th and others. Abandoned vessels, revised notice requirements, provisions. House Bill 668 by President Price, the 48th and others. Guardian War Petition for appointment of guardian under certain circumstances, provisions. House Bill 670 by President Powell, 32nd and others. Georgia State Council for Interstate Juvenile Supervision, number of legislative branch representatives, revised. House Bill 692 by President Maxwell, 17th and others. Deferred compensation plans, governing authority of a municipality may pay costs or fees associated with an employee's participation in a plan, provide. House Bill 695, President Epson, the 144th and others. Special license plates, Georgia Forestry Foundation established. House Bill 699, Representative Belton, the 112th and others. Firefighter certification, military firefighter training may be accepted as required basic training, provide. House Bill 700 by Representative Belton, 112th and others. Georgia Student Finance Authority, service cancelable educational loans, include graduate degree programs. House Bill 757 by Representative Powell, 32nd and others. Local government, regulatory powers of cities and counties with certificate of public necessity and convenience, provisions. House Bill 775 by Representative Powell, 32nd and others. Provisions of businesses, real estate management companies, provisions. House Bill 784 by Representative Dubnik, 29th and others. Specialty license plates, promote conservation of waterfowl populations and their habitats, established. House Bill 808 by Representative Nimmer of the 178th and others. Courts, as term of court in certain counties of the Waycross Circuit, change. House Bills 811 by Representative Powell, the 171st and others. Revenue Department of authorized to share tax information that assists in the identification of non-compliant taxpayers, provided. House Bill 815 by Representative Martin, the 49th and others. Special license plates, Georgia Masonic Charities, established. House Bill 816 by Representative Gravely of the 67th and others. Revenue Department of mandatory fingerprinting and criminal record checks for certain individuals, provide. House Bill 831 by Representative Roger the 10th and others. Georgia's Employment First Act and Act, House Bill 840 by Representative Hitchens, the 161st and others. Revenue taxation, penalties and interest in the event of military service in combat zone, provide exemption. House Bill 843 by Representative Shaw, the 176th and others. Revenue taxation, tax credits include any census tract in a county that contains a federal military installation and industrial park. House Bill 885 by Representative McCall, the 33rd and others. Georgia Air Quality Act limitations on powers of certain boards and departments to provide certain provisions. House Bill 907 by Representative Fleming, 121st and others. Public officers and employees appoint and election of successor in event of vacancy in the office of district attorney, provide. House Bill 951 by Representative Shaw and the 76 and others. Education established Center for Rural Prosperity and Innovation, provisions. House Resolution 1090 by Representative Watson of the 172nd and others. Jeff Davis County, Chris County, change the use certain property authorized. House Resolution 1104, Resolution agreeing to the 151st and others. Property granting of non-exclusive easements authorized. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
It is now time for the morning roll call. Time for the morning roll call. Are there any motions to excuse? Chair recognizes the senator from the 56th, Distinguished Public Safety Committee Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. I'd ask unanimous consent to excuse the senators from the 40th and the 3rd for business outside the Capitol.
40th and 3rd, without objection, the senator from the 40th and 3rd will be excused. Chair recognizes the Distinguished Appropriations Chairman, senator from the 4th.
Ask unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 49th for business outside the Capitol.
49th, without objection, senator from the 49th will be excused. Chair now recognizes senator from Columbus, senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 39th and the 5th.
39th and 5th. 39th and 5th. Is there objection? Without objection, senator from 39th and 5th will be excused. Any other motions to excuse? Any other motions to excuse? Senators, please signify your presence by voting the A switch. Secretary will unlock the machine. We would like to present the Doctor of the Day to the Senate at this time, and it's my honor now to recognize the senator from the 37th to do so.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's my pleasure to introduce this morning Dr. James Tallman from Cobb County. He's practiced medicine for 45 years in Georgia. He received his medical degree from the Medical College of Georgia and completed an internship at the University of South Carolina. Dr. Tallman began his practice as an ER physician and later completed a residency and fellowship in diagnostic and vascular radiology at Emory University. He was a Vietnam-era veteran, having served as a Navy medical doctor at the Marine Corps Supply Center in Albany, Georgia. Cobb County resident for 39 years, Dr. Tallman has served as past president of the Cobb Medical Society and medical director of the School of Radiology Technology at Kennestone Hospital in Marietta. He served as Doctor of the Day for several years. It's my pleasure to introduce him, and I ask you to give him a warm Senate welcome.
Thank you. It's an honor to be Physician of the Day at the Georgia Legislature. I appreciate the opportunity to again serve. Thank you for all that you do for the health care of Georgians. As physicians, we appreciate the opportunity to partner with you to increase access to medical care for Georgians. Thank you.
Well done, well said. It is now time for our morning devotion. Would ask that senators please cease all audible conversation, and if you would, please take your seats as we are preparing the Senate for our morning devotion. And doorkeepers, if you would ask that you secure the chamber at this time. It is now my distinct honor to call upon the distinguished senator from the 42nd for the purpose of leading us in our pledge and then introducing our chaplain of the day. Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, if you'll join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now the Georgia flag. I pledge allegiance to the Georgia flag and to the principles for which it stands, wisdom, justice, and moderation. It's my honor this morning to bring to our chamber Reverend Dr. Joseph McBrayer. He is the associate pastor at Oak Grove United Methodist Church, which is a large and vibrant congregation in DeKalb County. Dr. McBrayer enjoys music, technology, photography, and learning. He's passionate about life, justice, and community, and also coffee. I am too. He is an ordained deacon in the North Georgia United Methodist Church and holds a forestry degree from Auburn University, as well as a Master of Divinity and a Doctor of Ministry from the Candler School of Theology at Emory University. He has previously served in ministry with Emory Wesley Fellowship, the General Board of Higher Education and Ministry's Collegiate Ministry Division, and at Glen Memorial United Methodist Church. He grew up in Carrollton, Georgia, and has lived in and around Decatur for the past 11 years with his spouse, Frances, who is a social worker with refugees at Catholic Charities. They are also parents to a remarkable 3-year-old little girl. Dr. McBrayer is also the pastor to one of our wonderful doorkeepers, Jerry Cooley, and also our Sergeant at Arms, John Long. It's my honor to present Reverend Dr. Joseph McBrayer.
Thank you all again, Mr. President, Senator Parent, and the Secretary of the Senate's office for this honor to be here with you today. I'm delighted to be here as a parent of an adoptive child with special needs, and if you heard my wife working with immigrants and refugees, it's a delight to be with you this day to bring you a word from the Christian tradition that I represent and have found to be my faith tradition. So thank you for this honor. There's an old Greek understanding of truth as something that is unconcealing. Truth is whatever reveals the world to us. And parables are one of the ways that we find our Rabbi Jesus revealing truth to us. Parables are stories that reveal something. Parables normally start with 3 parts. The first part is to establish the status quo, the way things are, the way everyone knows that's how it goes. Phase 2 of a parable is something that subverts that wisdom. It may even offend you just a little bit, and that's something we got to look out for when we're reading Scripture. The third thing it does is takes that learning and offers some third way of thinking, a non-dualistic kind of wisdom. Parables are dialectic, meaning they engage us to think, to hold 2 ideas in tension, a challenging work that you all do every single day. And parables invite us into thinking outside of just the dualistic left, right, black, and white. Parables can also be disturbing to us because they make us think in ways that are challenging and to evaluate complex issues and to not go for just a simplistic or a simple way to look at something, but with the nuance and the importance in the details. From the Christian tradition, I want to offer a parable of Jesus called the parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector, found in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 18. 2 men went up to the temple to pray, and a Pharisee and a tax collector. The Pharisee, standing by himself, was praying, "God, I thank you that I'm not like these other heathens, these tax collectors and rogues and adulterers and thieves." And the tax collector, standing far off, beat his breast and said, "God, be merciful to me, a sinner." Jesus said to the people listening, "I tell you that this man went down to his home justified rather than the Pharisee. For all who exalt themselves will be humbled, and all who humble themselves will be exalted." This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Now, the first century audience hearing this would have known that the Pharisee was the religious elite, the one with status, the one in charge of the societal powers, and would have also recognized tax collectors as the worst of sinners, the scourge of the Jewish people because they were collecting taxes for the Roman occupiers. And the Gospel of Luke is about this contrast between the privileged rich and the humble poor. And this parable forces us who hear it to listen, to think about our own sense of direction, our own discerning of who am I identifying with in this story. So the typical position one of the parable, the Pharisee is the devout person. The Pharisee is the devout person, and the tax collector is this terrible sinner. That's position one, the status quo. The next part of the parable, position two, we learn the content of their character by the manner and the content of what they say when they pray. The prayer of the Pharisee is a self-serving prayer, thanking God that he is not like these other terrible people, including the very tax collector, maybe standing a little further away. His braggadocious oversharing is proof of his own self-assumed superiority. And you notice the Pharisee doesn't ask anything of God in his prayers. He doesn't ask for God's help, and he neither shows nor humility nor sorrow for anything. Maybe he believes he doesn't need to ask for forgiveness or guidance from God. Now, by contrast, we see the self-assumed sinful tax collector standing far off, confessing his unworthiness before God, echoing Psalm 51, saying, "Have mercy on me, God." And his addition of sinner shows his self-awareness, that he's done the tough work to think about his own heart, his own life and practice. And the twist of this parable for all of us today, including myself, is to see this third position that Jesus offers, where he says to the powerful positioned people to listen, that self-knowledge, honest humility of the tax collector is the proper way to show righteousness and prayer and action before God. One writer said it quite succinctly, that the nature of grace is paradoxical. Grace can only be received by those who have learned empathy for others. For all who exalt themselves will be humbled, and all who humble themselves will be exalted. However you pray, let us join in a moment to pray together. Gracious and merciful God, you call us to love our neighbor and to protect the strangers and the poor and the aliens among us. We ask that you would give us this day the moral fortitude and selflessness to seek justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with you. And all God's people said, Amen. Thank you.
That was well done. Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Good, good. All right, let's do a picture on it. We have a special group we would like to recognize at this time, and Secretary will read a resolution.
Senate Resolution 740 by Senator Lucas of the 26th and others, a resolution recognizing February 22nd, 2018 as Pearl Jackson Day at the state capitol and for other purposes. Whereas Pearl Jackson was born on February 22nd, 1887. Whereas Pearl was a native of Wellston, Georgia, now known as Warner Robins, Georgia. And whereas because of her love for children, she decided to go to Houston County Board of Education to discuss the construction of a school for African American children. After receiving the board's approval, she donated 1.5 acres of her own land to the school, which was later named the Pearl Stevens School in her honor. And whereas the Pearl Stevens Memorial Scholarship Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing monetary assistance to students, now therefore be resolved by the Senate that the members of the body recognize February 22nd, 2018 as Pearl Jackson Day at the state capitol. That concludes the order.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? Chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. To speak to the resolution and recognize our very special guest today, it's now my honor to call upon the distinguished senator from Bibb County, senator from the 26th.
Thank you, Mr. President, and ladies and gentlemen of the Senate. I was looking for Senator Walker. Evidently, he stepped out for a minute. But I would like to ask the great-granddaughter of the person that we are recognizing to speak on behalf of the family. And her name is Angela Grant.
Good morning. It is with both humility and pride that I graciously accept this honor on behalf of my great-grandmother. Pearl Stevens was a phenomenal woman. She was an educator, a philanthropist, a wife, a mother, a grandmother, and truly she was her brother's keeper. That is why our family also takes extreme pride in honoring her legacy and continuing her good works by giving scholarships to deserving college students each year. I often wonder if my great-grandmother could have ever imagined the future impact her selfless act would have. By donating land for the construction of the first African-American children, a school in Warner Robins, I would like to think that she knew that by educating a young mind that possibilities are endless. And to that I say, yay, Pearl. So again, our family say thank you. From the bottom of our hearts, we thank you.
We have another special group we would like to recognize, and the Secretary will read a resolution.
Senate Resolution 813 by Senator Wilkinson of the 50th, a resolution recognizing and commending Tim Harper for being awarded the title of Constitutional Officer of the Year of the State of Georgia and for other purposes. Whereas Tim Harper is the clerk of Superior Court in Banks County and has served the citizens of his county in that capacity since 1993. Whereas it is abundantly fitting and proper that this exceptional Georgian be recognized for his exemplary achievements and contributions to the community. Now therefore be resolved by the Senate that the members of this body recognize and commend Tim Harper for being awarded the title of Constitutional Officer of the Year of the State of Georgia. That concludes the order.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair is none. The resolution is adopted. It is wonderful to have such a great individual here with us today in the Senate to speak to the resolution and recognize our special guest. It's now my honor to call upon the distinguished Agriculture Committee Chairman, the Senator from the 50th.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the Senate. There was a time when things in my life were fairly simple. That has changed over the years, but it gives me great pleasure to recognize the constitutional officer of the state of Georgia today. He is the clerk of court in Banks County. Now, a few years ago, I was an agriculture teacher in Banks County, and at the time that I was teaching agriculture there, back when they used to number the counties by population on the tags, how many of you remember when they used to do that? Banks County was number 132, and I was an agriculture teacher, and Banks County was the only county at that time out of 159 that did not have a traffic signal in the county. But I-85 and 441 have changed that, but at that time I'd get calls from the sheriff when they had livestock that had gotten out, and they'd want me to come and identify the livestock. It was kind of like Mayberry, and I mean that in the best possible way. But Tim Harper is here today. He still lives in a house right next to the courthouse in Homer, and he can walk home for lunch every day and walk to work. But for the past 25 years, he's done a great job as a clerk of court in Banks County. It gives me, it's a high honor for me to have the opportunity to recognize him. On the podium with us today, we have his wife, Judy Harper, and we have his mother, Lois Harper, and we have his niece, Bailey Brown. So at this time, I'm going to present this resolution to Tim and give him the opportunity to make some comments.
Thank you, Senator Wilkins and Mr. President of the Senate and Senators. It's an honor to be here today. A lot of firsts for my family. This is obviously the first time I've ever been here. This is the first time my mother has ever been in the state capitol. So we're going to tour the capitol after this and enjoy the day in Atlanta. But I thank you for the recognition and the award, and it's an honor to be here today, and it's an honor to be a county officer in Georgia. Thank you.
Here, here. Well said, Tom. That's awesome. Thank you. Good. Let's do a picture. I'm glad you got We have another very special guest, an honored guest we'd like to recognize at this time, and we'll be doing this at the well of the Senate. If the Senate would please give the Secretary your attention as he reads the resolution.
Senate Resolution 872 by Senators Anderson and the 24th and others, a resolution recognizing and commending Mr. Scott Winkler and for other purposes. Whereas Mr. Scott Winkler joined the military in 1994 to serve as a guardian of this nation's freedom and liberty, and whereas Mr. Winkler sustained a spinal cord injury while stationed in a hot zone in Tikrit, Iraq in 2003, and whereas in 2006 Mr. Winkler was introduced to the sport of shot put at a military sports camp, and whereas his commitment and perseverance led him to earn a gold medal in shot put and a bronze medal in discus at the 2011 Pan American Games, and win a bronze medal in shot put at the 2013 IPC Athletics World Championships. Whereas from 2012 to 2017, Mr. Winkler served as the field coach for the Grovetown Middle School track and field team and became the field coach for the Harlem Middle School track and field team in 2018. And whereas Mr. Winkler has demonstrated superior skill, determination, and talent as a Paralympic athlete, and it is abundantly fitting and proper that the extraordinary accomplishments of this distinguished Georgian be appropriately recognized. Now, therefore, be resolved by the Senate that the members of this body express their most profound appreciation of Mr. Scott Winkler for his service to this nation and the incredible sacrifice he has made for us all, and commend his remarkable achievements in athletics. That concludes the order. Is
there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none. The resolution is adopted. Now you can clap. Oh, appreciate your service.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
It's my honor now to recognize Senator from the 24th and the Well to recognize our very, very honored and special guest today.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is a great honor for me to present to you a dear friend of mine, a man that lifts me up. He really does. A man that has served our country so that we may be free. A man that got wounded in Iraq, came home and didn't lay down on the couch. A man that moved forward because he knew he was put in that wheelchair for a purpose, to encourage young people, to encourage people all over the United States to move forward and make this a greater country that we live in. As you heard in the resolution, this gentleman has represented our great country in Iraq in service, and also he came home and he represented our country in many other countries in shooting the shot put and the disc. Mexico, London, France. He's determined to win. He's so determined that he wants to help young people, that he is the coach for the middle school at Harlem Middle, field and track. He also, at one time, when my wife was a principal at Columbia Middle, he and another gentleman that was in wheelchairs had a basketball game against my wife and other staff members, and they had to be in wheelchairs too. And you know what the score was. But this man right here, ladies and gentlemen, helps young people, grown people, and still helps our great country. It is truly an honor for us to recognize Scott Winkler, a great American, today with this resolution. Scott, it's yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Lee, thank you for the speech. And your wife won that game. We lost. For me, to represent my country again, once on the battlefield, and as an athlete, to see that American flag rise to the top of that pole and your national anthem sing, it hurt. It hits me so hard in the heart. I cry every time. I love my country. I fought for it, and I win for it. And without the support of my family, my wife, my mother-in-law, and father-in-law, keeps me driving on. And I'm here to inspire others that, you know, whatever you want in life, if you believe in it, you can achieve anything you want. Kids to adults. You believe you're going to become a senator, you're here. You achieved your goals. What's next? You have to keep looking to the future. Keep pushing horizons. Just because you're disabled, it's not the end of the world. Life will go on. It's what you want to do in life. And that's what made me push myself to where I'm at this day. And that's what helps me. I feel great watching the young kids that I coach through Grovetown, I did for 5 years, that went to state for the first time in middle school and came first, second, third. right now they're in high school, they're still throwing. You know, I enjoy what I do. When I pass away, I want people to remember me for what I've inspired, not for what I've done. And that's what makes us the greatest country in the world. Thank you for everything. Thank you for recognizing me. Thank you for having my family come up, and thank you guys for what you guys do. You guys really need the applause. I need to applaud you guys for protecting us and taking care of everybody back home while we're doing our job overseas. So thank you all.
Thank you. Well said. Chair now recognizes Senator from the 35th.
Excuse me. David, can they come stand right there? They can? They have to stand right there. Okay.
Secretary will read a resolution.
Senate Resolution 992 by Senator James the
Yeah, I have
35th,
to
a
stand
resolution
there.
committing to House Win, the Perfect Love Foundation, and all other citizens, organizations, and civic leaders for the Unified Georgia Initiative and their commitment to furthering unity and love throughout the state and for other purposes. That concludes the order.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 35th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senators. I am so excited today on this 32nd legislative day. I've joined with other senators, and the senator from the 41st, the minority leader, and I are sponsoring Unified Georgia Day. And I rise on this point of personal privilege to honor the Unified Georgia Initiative and to recognize Tails Wynn and the Perfect Love Foundation for leading a movement of unity and love throughout the state of Georgia. This much needed initiative has received televised attention, and it's all about bringing people together in times of division. There's 5 of them are standing right here on the wall. We applaud you. Amen. Unified Georgia encourages us all to look past our many differences for the betterment of our state and country. And today we are joined by citizens of all ages, from second graders to middle school students, millennials and older, with schools from Decatur, Cobb County, and college students from Georgia State, from Emory, just to name a few. In fact, the senator from the 42nd just told me that her son's school is there too. In fact, all of the young people, all the people who are here for Unified Georgia Day, please stand and receive a warm Georgia welcome. Please stand. Stand up. And they're all over the Capitol, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. You're amazing citizens, and I'm so happy that today is just a motivation for all of us to continue moving forward in a path of racial and gender equality while encouraging us to revive a spirit of love for one another. Unified Georgia will be commemorated for years to come, and this is our hope, that this message of unity and standing against discrimination is not only heard today, but is received by each individual here. We all represent Georgia, but we are forever to build a better Georgia together. So thank you, and may we all continue to unify Georgia. Thank you, Senators. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the will, and thank you very much. Unify Georgia.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair is none. The resolution is adopted. Are there any unanimous consents? Senators wishing to rise on a point of personal privilege. First will be the senator from the 32nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Fellow senators, I want to recognize some special guests that are sitting in the gallery. They're from Emory Nursing School's Extraordinary Clinic, and there are individuals and families here as well affected by X and Y chromosome variations. X and Y chromosome disorders are common but frequently undiagnosed genetic conditions, and 1 child in 500 has a variation like this that can cause complex learning disabilities. Whereas 10 babies born every day have this X and Y chromosome variation, only 3 will ever be diagnosed. So Emory Healthcare has established a multidisciplinary clinic named the Extraordinary Clinic to serve those individuals. There are several of them in the gallery. If you would stand up and be recognized, and thank you so much for coming to the Capitol. Come down for a picture.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 29th on a point of personal privilege. Senator from the 29th, if you'll hold for just a second. Chair recognizes the minority leader.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. I just want to recognize Lakeside High School is here today. It's one of the great educational institutions in DeKalb County. I know the President of the Senate wants to congratulate them here today. So, Governor, members of the Senate, would you all stand from Lakeside High School up there? Thank you so much for all you do, establishing a great community in Tucker and our surrounding area. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator from the 29th, point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know that everyone in the chamber is well aware that in about an hour we will complete a ritual that occurs in this building once every 2 years, and that's qualifying for office. And when I first ran for the Senate, qualifying occurred in late April, and we had an election in July. And you may wonder, I know some members never ran under that old calendar, you may wonder, why is it that we have qualifying going on while we're in the middle of our legislative session with business going on at the Capitol? I think most people agree that having qualifying occur while we are considering bills, while public policy is being formulated, is not good for our process. So how did we get here? We got here because of a lawsuit 4 years ago that was filed against the state for not complying with federal law with respect to military and overseas voters and giving them the time they need to be sure they can cast their ballots and their voices can be heard. I rise, Mr. President, today just to say this needs to be the last year that we see qualifying occur while the legislature is in session. We need our state government to take the control back over our election calendar so that a campaign is not beginning while people are still trying to fulfill the duties of their term of office. And this is not rocket science, Mr. President. Other states have figured this out. Last summer, when many of us were enduring a $50 million special election for Congress here in Georgia that lingered over 9 weeks. In South Carolina, the runoff only lasted 2 weeks. Why is that? Because their Secretary of State, along with their legislature, provided a secure means for their men and women serving overseas to vote and not having to have a 45-day window to do that. So we can solve that problem, Mr. President. We can create a legal environment that protects the sanctity of the ballot for everyone serving overseas while allowing us to have an election calendar that makes common sense, that pushes qualifying beyond this time of the year, that makes sure we're not asking people to be voting right around Memorial Day when graduation is occurring and lots of other family activities are going on. This just requires a little common sense and application of state law to federal law. So let's let 2018 be the last year that we do qualifying the way we've done it this week. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the will.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 53rd. 53rd.
Mr. President, it is here. The moment you've been waiting for. That's right, live at the Tabernacle, Capstock. We had Battle of the Bands last year. This year, it's called Capstock. It'll be a great event. Senator from the 7th putting it together. But remember last year, you had the senator from the 26th singing. How great was that? The senator from the 7th was singing, writing, and I got you down, and playing a guitar. And we had the senator from the 36th. You ought to have seen her performance. It's amazing. Senator from the 7th, the 9th, the 46th. It's just on and on. And I'm sure they're Grammy Award winners to be named later. But it'll be a great event, and I urge you to attend. And it will be, it's on your desk, it will be Tuesday, March 13th. And you need to be there. See you.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 27th on a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. We are wrapping down our session here, coming on the final days, and I was reminded of one of the first times I even came to this Capitol. It was Sign and Die in 2014. I was not yet a senator, but I was running for the seat that I have now, and that night left a very, very impressionable mark on me. There were lots of moms, lots of dads, lots of children in wheelchairs in hopes that on that night, 2014, that this body would take up the legalization of medical marijuana. As we all know, the night ended in tears. There were, again, moms, children, as they were walking out of the Capitol crying because they were denied access to an herb that they felt like would make their families' lives and their children's lives better. I was excited to vote the next session, 2015, to legalize the possession of cannabis oil, medical marijuana, but I was confused because within this bill, it did not provide a mechanism for people to access it. It was legal to have it, but there was no way for somebody to get it. Well, in that time, we have had study committees, we have had commissions, and there are 30 other states that have provided ways for their citizens to get access to this medical marijuana. So I was really frustrated when I read in the AJC, actually this morning, where it says that based upon a study committee that this body is going to do, it says that Cagle said we are taking a major step to ensure that our state is doing everything possible to provide patients with the most effective treatments through a safe, reliable access system. By kicking the can down the road, by doing yet another study committee, is not doing everything possible. We need to take up the measure this session so that we can provide safe access for all those people that need this access to this herb. And I would encourage you, Mr. President, to instruct your chairman, to instruct those that are overseeing this, that we take up this measure this session right now so we can provide the needed access to cannabis oil and medical marijuana to all those that need it. And with that, Mr. President, I yield the well.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 14th on a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to tell just a brief story. I had the opportunity recently to be in Phoenix and join a couple of my colleagues from high school. And one of them was telling me a story about his daughter, which I think we can all take to note. You see, his daughter attended a private school. She was a cheer queen and the cheerleading queen. And we know those individuals, you know, they pretty much win everything and they're kind of the popular girl in the school. She was also a part of the gymnastic team. But on one particular time, she was at one of the meetings, and they had this award that they would give, this most inspirational award, and they give it out to each one of the people during, or the players, athletes during the month. And she got it, and she wore it. But one time she was in practice, and she saw one of the girls that you would say was not quite as effective at her routine as she was. But this particular day, this young lady performed flawlessly, something that was very difficult for her. Not hard for Morgan, but certainly hard for this young lady. Morgan walked over and took the most inspirational award off and pinned it on this young lady. Seems like something that's insignificant, right? Except the following week, they also have within their school candles. They pass a candle around and you talk about what's going on in your life. When it came to this young lady lowered her head and said, "Something dramatic happened to me last week." You see, Morgan recognized me for something that I did. You see, Morgan, who I didn't think even really knew who I was, pinned the inspirational award on my chest. You see, I had planned that day to go home and end my life. Ladies and gentlemen, we have no idea the influence that we have on others, especially in the roles that we are down here. I would encourage each and every one of us to take time to look around and to pour into those that God puts in our path. And with that, Mr. President, I'll yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes Senator from the 36th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I want to share some thoughts as we are moving through the latter days of our session and tackling health care on many fronts. I'd like to speak to you as a person who's been on the Health and Human Services Committee here since I came to the Senate 12 years ago and was on the House Health and Human Services for some 20 years. Right now, we're seeing a flurry of bills that are seeking to help our deteriorating healthcare system, particularly in rural areas, and rightfully so. And our hospitals are closing, our access is diminishing, and our physicians are leaving, and our insurance networks in Georgia are the most narrow in the country. And our patients are driving further and further to get good health care. The bills we're looking at in this body have included the APRN scope changes, the rural hospital tax credits, micro-hospitals, substance abuse czars, health innovation centers, and telemedicine, just to name a few. And I support most of these measures. They're not bad ideas. They're very well-meaning, but they're not the best we can do, in my opinion. I think we need to be looking for the best approach. As these bills come through our committee, it's occurred to me that our two parties here in the state have come to sort of an agreement. And that agreement is that our health system, especially our rural system, needs our help and our support. And I'm glad that we're all on the same page in that regard. But I'm concerned we have little agreement on the solution, because it seems that all these bills we have this year are trying to close gaps in our health system. And does that sound familiar? Closing the gap? You see, there are simple ways to accomplish what all these bills are trying to accomplish. And a simple way, and I would argue a better way, it merely requires us to better leverage state dollars to draw down federal dollars to help meet our state's health needs. Currently, with Medicaid, and most of you all know this, some of you possibly not, but we get a 2/3 federal match for our state dollars. And we gladly accept that match to render services and provide coverage for Medicaid-eligible people. We gladly accept the 2/3 federal match. But there's a better match. There's a better deal on the table, and it's a $9 to $1 federal match to offer health insurance to more Georgians. Sounds like a deal, doesn't it? If we take a 2/3 match and have been doing it for decades, why wouldn't we want a 9 to 1 match for Medicaid? I hear a lot of conversation about how we need to run Georgia more like a business, and I don't know of a business anywhere that would say no to a 9 to 1 match. These are real dollars. These are real dollars. It's not a theory. Only 19 states are failing to do this, and sadly we are one of them. So I asked my Republican colleagues to join me and others in urging this state to run more like a business, to be good stewards of our taxpayer dollars, to leverage those dollars for significant federal matching dollars. It's a deal that how can you refuse it? To stop nibbling around the edges with very well-intended Band-Aid approaches, and instead let's act to put an insurance card in the wallets of every Georgian across this state. And if we do, then those Georgians with that coverage can engage in the free market of health care and pick their own doctor rather than using the emergency room when they're in a health crisis. They can protect their families like we do with our employer-supported health insurance policies. They can support their local hospitals by providing an insurance card. So let's come together, run Georgia more like a business instead of running our hospitals and healthcare providers out of business. That's something I hope we can all agree on, and don't be known as a Band-Aid factory, but as making real change. Thank you.
We have a consent calendar of privilege resolutions that are before you. Is there objection? Without objection, the consent calendar of privilege resolutions are therefore adopted. Are there any motions to withdraw or commit? We have a local consent calendar. Is there any filed objections, Mr. Secretary, to any of the bills on the local consent calendar?
Mr. President, there are no objections filed.
Is the objection agreed? And report of committee which failed to pass the bill of the local state and local governmental operations which failed to pass the bill. All those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the On the local consent calendar, the yeas are 46, the nays are 2, and all the bills on the local consent calendar is therefore adopted. Chair recognizes Senator from the 51st.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate immediately transmit House Bill 626 to the House.
Senators moving for immediate transmittal on House Bill 626. Is there objection? Local bill dealing with Forsyth County. Without objection, it'll be immediately transmitted. Moving on to the general calendar, Secretary will read House Bill 135.
House Bill 135 by Representative Hitchens, the 161st, and others. A bill entitled Enactment Code Section 47.226 of the OCGA relating to certain law enforcement officers permitted to obtain creditable service in the Employees Retirement System of Georgia under certain conditions and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Retirement offers the following substitute to House Bill 135, a bill entitled Enactment Code Section 47.226 of the OCGA relating to certain law enforcement officers permitted to obtain creditable service in the Employees Retirement System of Georgia under certain conditions, so as to expand the class of law enforcement officers that may obtain creditable service in such retirement system under certain conditions and for other purposes. Mr. President, a fiscal note and an auditor's bill has been attached. That concludes the order.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 7th. Present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, House Bill 135 adds a couple of positions to the legislation we passed a couple of years ago in regards to buying back credible service for state law enforcement in the retirement benefit plan. It adds investigators of DDS, K-9 handlers of Department of Corrections to the underlying legislation, so they can buy back up to 5 years credible service at no cost to the state. And if there are no questions, Mr. President, I will yield the well.
No questions, Senator. Questions on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection? Without objection, committee substitute is adopted. Now, does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection? Grant a Porter Committee which fail pass the bill. Chairs none. Porter Committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Any objections? Chairs none. Main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? The question is on the pass of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the pass of the bill, the yeas are 51, the nays are 0, and this bill, having received requisite constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. Secretary now will read House Bill 257.
House Bill 257 by Representative Tankersley of the 160th and others. The bill will be titled Enactment Title 36 of the OCGA relating to local government, so as to require local government authorities to register with the Department of Community Affairs in order to be eligible for state funds, to change the deadline for local government authorities to register with said department, to prohibit authorities from incurring debt or credit obligations prior to submitting a report to said department and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair now recognizes Senator from the 7th. Present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 257 basically does two things. It aligns the date of that the registrations for the authority registration and the registered authority finances report have to be sent to the Department of Community Affairs, and it also aligns the penalties for not submitting those reports to DCA in line with each other. That's the underlying legislation. If there are no questions, Mr. President, I will yield the well.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is the objection agreed and report of committee which fail pass the bill? Chairs none. Report of committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are the objections? Chairs none. Main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? Question is on the pass the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the pass of the bill, the yeas are 51, the nays are 0, and this bill having zero constitutional majority is therefore adopted. Secretary now will read House Bill 432.
House Bill 432 by Representative Dunning of the 29th and others. The bill will be titled and acted in Code Section 23411 of the OCG relating to definitions relative to tuition equalization grants at private colleges and universities, so as to provide that certain institutions that lack accreditation by the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools shall be deemed to be an approved school for tuition equalization purposes if previously deemed an approved school under certain alternative provisions and for other purposes. That concludes the order.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 55th to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. Senate Bill 432 is a really easy bill to give a yes vote to. If you care about students in this state, then you will vote yes. This bill is for those colleges that have transitioned from for-profit to nonprofit so that they can continue to receive state funds for their students, such as the Hope Scholarship, equalization grants, and other aid that's available for the students of this state. Mr. President, if there are no questions, I'll just yield the well.
You do have one question. Chair recognizes the chairman of the Higher Ed Committee, Senator from the 40th.
Thank
Senator,
you.
Senator, do you yield?
I yield.
Senator, isn't it true that there's various accreditation agencies in this state, and because Herzing is headquartered up in Wisconsin, that they are headquartered by the Higher Learning Commission? Is that not true?
That is true, Senator. Thanks for asking me that question.
Is it further not true that about 85% of the students at Herzing, for example, are residents of Georgia?
Exactly.
And finally,
right.
is it not true that there are various accreditation agencies in this country, and even schools like Harvard, University of Michigan, et cetera, they also are not accredited by SACS? Is that true?
The senator must know what he's talking about.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 13th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. With Senator yield?
Yeah, I yield.
Senator, I served on a school board at one time, a private school, and we became SACS accredited. I know it's a pretty big deal, but I also know that that is the accreditation that is recognized throughout the country.
Right.
And that's my concern with your bill, is that this will recognize another accreditation other than SACS. Is that what this does?
That's exactly what it does, and that's because this Herzing College is based, their main campus is in Wisconsin, and they are accredited by the Higher Learning Commission.
Senator, further yield?
I yield.
My concern, Senator, is that we're opening up Pandora's box to all these other accrediting bodies. Is it not true there are many accrediting bodies that are available to schools?
That may be true, Senator, but we're not opening up Pandora's box. We are merely making it easier for the students that are already enrolled to continue to get the aid that they have already been getting. This is not something new. They're already getting the scholarships, but if we don't pass this bill, then it cuts that out, and that hurts our students.
Would Senator further yield?
I'll yield.
Senator, isn't it true that their accreditation, though, may not be recognized as the SACS accreditation is recognized, so that when they graduate and they do apply for jobs, someone may say this was not a accreditation that we recognize?
That's not true, Senator. They are recognized.
Senator, I disagree. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 46 for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
I yield.
My question is, would credit hours earned at this non-accredited institution transfer into University System of Georgia institutions? Otherwise, we're spending taxpayer money for credits that aren't really helping somebody get a degree in Georgia. Do you know?
No, Senator. We did not discuss transfer of credits. Just that we want the students to continue to get the aid that they're already getting so that they can continue their education.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 9th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will you yield?
I yield.
Isn't it true, though, that this bill only affects a very limited number of schools that were previously already approved, but
That's exactly right. And there have been other schools that have been approved, such as Phoenix University. There are several here in this state. The Art Institute, for instance, has been approved. So this is just one more that we need to add to the list so we can keep our students in school and getting their education.
will you further yield?
Sure.
So you don't believe this is opening Pandora's box?
I do not believe that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 40th for a question.
Senator, will you yield for one further question?
I yield.
The gentleman from the, I can't get his district number, asked you a question about schools that are being accredited by the Higher Learning Commission. Schools include schools like Notre Dame and the University of Illinois. So I think if the Higher Learning Commission thinks enough of those schools and they accredit this one, that should be all right. Do you not think so?
It should be.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. And I also want to thank the senator from the 40th for working on this bill and recommended me to carry the bill on the floor.
No further questions, Senator.
Thank you. I yield.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is the objection agreed? The Porter Committee which fair will pass the bill. Chairs none. Porter Committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are the objections? Chairs none. Main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? Question is on the passage of the bill. All of those in favor of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 44, the nays are 8, and this bill, having received the constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. Secretary will read House Bill 777.
House Bill 777 by Representative Greedon on the 151st and others, a bill to be entitled an act to repeal Article 5 of Chapter 10 of Title 12 of the Official Code of Georgia, annotated relating to the historic Chattahoochee Compact, to provide for related matters, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Committee of the Senate on Interstate Cooperation recommends that this bill be due passed by Senator James the 35th. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 15th in order to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a simple bill, as some people want to say it's very lucky, 777. This is a bill that was offered to Representative Green in the House. He brought it over to the Senate because the director of the Historic Chattahoochee Commission asked that this be done. By way of full disclosure, the Alabama legislature has already done this, so this is a compact that is being dissolved by mutual consent between the two states, and I ask your approval. There are no questions, Mr. President. Further questions? I'll
No
yield
questions.
the well.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is the objection agreed and the Porter Committee which fail will pass the bill? Chair is none. Porter Committee is agreed to. All those in favor of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary, unlock the machine. Senator from the 52nd will stand by, has a special order. We will take up next. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 52 and the nays are 0. And this bill, AMC Rex constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. Read and adopt real quick. Secretary will read a resolution.
Senate Resolution 1002 by Senator Kirk of the 13th and others, a resolution committing and congratulating the Lee County High School Trojans football team for winning the 2017 GHSA Class 6A State Football Championship and for other purposes. That concludes the order.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair is none. The resolution is adopted. Chair recognizes the distinguished senator from the 52nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move that the Senate adopt the conference committee report on House Bill 205.
205. Read the caption and recall that the bill has been on your desk for 24 hours.
Committees of Conference report on HB 205. The committees of conference on HB 205 recommend that both the Senate and the House of Representatives recede from their positions and that the attached committees of conference substitute to House Bill 205 be adopted. It's respectfully submitted for the Senate by Senator Hufstadler, 52nd, and others. Committees of conference substitute to House Bill 205, but will title and amend Article 2, Chapter 4, Title 12 of the OCGA relating to mining and drilling so as to regulate the exploration and extraction of gas and oil in the state, to provide for definitions, provide for authority to create an oil and gas board under certain circumstances, and to require the prompt and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 52nd to present the conference committee report to House Bill 205.
Thank you, Mr. President. This identical bill was passed by the Senate last year, 52-0. It did have an addition on there, a friendly amendment from the senator of the 25th that was problematic for some other reasons. So that part has been removed. We're back to the original bill. This bill addresses hydraulic fracturing. The regulations from the 1970s, this wasn't even in existence, so there are no regulations. And this simply does not stop it at all. It says that there will be public hearings, that people will tell what chemicals, if any, they're putting into the ground, its impact on the water system. These are just common sense regulations for a industry that is new since regulations were in effect. And if there aren't any questions, I'll yield the well.
Chair recognizes senator from the 40th for a question. 40th? 40th, you have a question. You're recognized this time.
Senator Yield?
I'll yield.
Senator, will you confirm, and I believe so, this is the case, this has nothing to do with offshore drilling?
This doesn't. This is really, according to geologists, there's about 8 counties in northwest Georgia that there is the potential for hydraulic fracturing. This should only affect those 8 counties and simply puts in place some regulations, nothing to do with offshore drilling.
I appreciate it. Thanks, sir.
Chair recognizes the majority leader, the senator from the 46th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
I'll yield.
Would you give me a little more detail of what portion of the bill was removed by the conference committee? You said there was something from
There was
our body.
my good friend, the senator from the 25th, had a landfill issue that he was trying to address. It's completely separate from this bill, and I think that's being addressed in a different manner.
Is that the same bill we passed earlier this session?
We passed it earlier, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 25th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. With Senator Yield.
I'll yield.
Senator, isn't it true that I've worked with a good rules chairman over in the House on the language that I had in this bill, and we came to an understanding I'd get this removed and carry the language over to the House, which is now in the House at this time, and that he was gracious enough to be willing to help me there.
I think both the senator and the chairman have been very gracious in this process, and that I'm really happy everything's been worked out.
Thank you, Senator.
No further questions, Senator. The senators move the Senate adopt the conference committee report to House Bill 205. All of those in favor of the conference committee report will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 51, the nays are 0, and this bill, having received requisite constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. Chair recognizes the majority leader. That concludes our business for the day.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate stand adjourned until 10 a.m. on Monday, March the 12th. 10
a.m., March 12th. Read the announcements.
Rules will meet upon adjournment in 450 of the Capitol. Natural Resources Subcommittee will meet at 11:45 in the Mez. And Finance Tax Reform Subcommittee will meet at 1 p.m. in 123 of the Capitol. That concludes the order.
Any other announcements? The majority leader has moved. We stand adjourned till 10 a.m. Monday, March 12th, 2018 of our Lord. Is there? All of those in favor will say aye. All those opposed, no. Noes are weak and ayes clearly have it. We stand adjourned.